Hi guys, welcome to Shop Talk Live. Glad to see we've got a few people checked in already. This is a beginner's course to Coturnix. So for those of you who are new to Shop Talk Live, what we did was started a beginner series on keeping, raising, and breeding Coturnix. We go live every other Friday for this series, although there may be some changes to the schedule, which I'm going to go into here in a minute. I'll go into it right now. We've been having some issues going live from out in the quail room, and I don't know if it's a computer issue, an issue with the router, or what, but we just seem to keep getting disconnected while we're out there. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to continue on doing the live from the quail room. But I'll definitely keep doing the Shop Talk Live series from my computer room here. What I'll have to do is just set up a show prior to going live. But then I start thinking about it. Maybe I'd be better off just doing a video and uploading it to the channel. So I'm going to have to think about that a little bit. But we are going to continue with the Coturnix for Beginners courses. That will be at least every other Friday, possibly switched to every Friday, depending on what we decide to do. First off, this is a mini course geared mainly towards those who are new to keeping Coturnix, but even some of you more experienced quail keepers, might find this, some of the information here useful. A lot of the stuff that I talk about is the way that I do things. I know there are a lot of other people that do things different than me, but as far as these courses go, I will be talking about the way that I do stuff. So first off, this is a real quick course outline. You can see we've got quite a few different classes planned. We plan on doing 30 minutes of instruction, followed by up to an hour of Q&A. So it could go, up to 90 minutes total. Last week we did a getting started video, and we brought this screen up here. These are some of the equipment and supplies that you should already have or are, have plans to pick up. The biggest one on there that I think is research. Talk to people, visit the Coturnix Corner Facebook group page, talk to people over there. They can give you a really good idea on the best incubators to use, brooders, cages, and that kind of stuff. So this is probably a screen that I'll bring up on every one of the lives that we do, or every one of these beginner courses that we do, just for the new people that may not have caught it prior to that. Also, we do have a channel supporter for this beginner series. It is Northwest Quail Farm. I believe they're out of Washington State, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe they're out of Washington State. But what they have done is they have made up a couple prize packages. You can see them here on the screen right now. One is a water system with the automatic horizontal nipples in them, and that includes 10 of the half-inch PVC tees. It also includes 10 of the horizontal water nipples, and with the washers, and a repair kit. The other prize package that they give away is a starter pack of quail egg cartons. You're going to get 25 of the 12 cell cartons, and 25 personalized labels with your name on it. Plus, they throw in 5 pairs of scissors to give away with the eggs that you have. Also, if you look on the water system one, you can get 10% off of any order on their eBay store, and the link is there if you use the C Corner 10 coupon code when you check out. So check that out. I've been to their store. They've got a lot of supplies and stuff there. They're supposed to be sending some stuff out to me to, demo for you guys and maybe do a review on or whatever. But um, that is something that I appreciate, and that is specifically for the Shop Talk Live series. We're not going to put that over on Coturnix Corner Live. Let's see here. Okay, so in this segment, we are going to. Oh, I want to thank our moderators. I believe I saw Henriette Bullions in here. She is one of our moderators. She is actually joining us tonight from South Africa. So, Henriette, I really appreciate you joining it. I see that Marius is also in the house, and I appreciate your moderation duties here on the channel. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is incubation and hatching quail eggs. Like I said earlier, I'm going to present this as the way that I do things. There may be others out there, that disagree with, what I say, or they do things different. But I just want to say that these are the things that have worked for me over the years, and I usually get, pretty good results, when I incubate eggs. So let's go ahead and get this thing started. For most of you who are just getting into keeping Coturnix quail, you have two ways of getting started. One is either buying live birds or buying hatching eggs and hatching out your own. I prefer that, and I recommend that people start out with hatching eggs. One, because it's a little bit less expensive than trying to buy, live birds. And also it gives you the experience of, setting your eggs, hatching them, brooding the chicks, growing them out and up into, having them start laying, or just laughing at a comment that just popped up. But yeah, I like the fact that you get a little bit of experience right off the bat, right out of the gate. You're learning how to, hatch out the eggs, take care of the chicks, set up all your equipment, grow them out, get them started laying eggs, and then the cycle starts all over again, back to hatching eggs. So for most of you, unless you've got, someplace close that you can buy eggs, most of you are going to be buying shipped eggs. And shipped eggs usually come in through USPS priority mail, and the eggs are packaged in these foam inserts like you see here on the screen. That is to protect the eggs during shipping, in case the boxes get dropped or crushed or whatever. They actually do a really good job. I've had boxes come in that I would have swore the eggs were going to be damaged, and packaged like this. They've also got foam underneath the eggs and a foamer on top. So for the most part, the eggs get here in pretty decent shape. Some of the breeders that you may be ordering from have like a hatch rate guarantee, which basically means that, say you order 50 eggs, they're guaranteeing that at least 25 of those eggs will hatch. So that's nice. I would recommend, again, checking around on some of the different Facebook group pages, talk to different people here in the group, and find out who they recommend, who they use. A lot of it too is going to depend on what type of Coturnix you want. Whether you want some of the various colors, maybe some of the more rare colors, or if you're just interested in raising, meat birds and you're looking for jumbos, which would be, like the Pharaohs and some of the other jumbo lines that are out there. So when you first get your eggs, first thing you want to do once you get them opened up is you want to inspect them and make sure that none of the eggs are cracked or broken. Also look over the eggs and make sure that there's no dried manure on the eggs. You can always clean them up a little bit, like with a paper towel, if it's not too bad. But what you want to do is you want to place those eggs on a counter somewhere or in a safe spot where they're not going to get disturbed or damaged. And you're basically giving them a resting period. Depending on the shipping conditions, when you order your eggs, it may be extremely cold or extremely warm, and the eggs may have, temperature may have dropped down a little bit, or raised up a little bit higher. So by giving them a 12 to 24-hour resting period, you're allowing the temperatures to stabilize on the egg. But what also you're doing, and this is probably the biggest factor, is on the large end of the egg, there is an air cell. And a lot of times during shipping, especially if they're handled roughly, the air cell will become detached and it just kind of floats around inside the egg. So by placing them pointy end down, you're allowing that air cell to rise back up and hopefully reattach. Sometimes it doesn't reattach, and you can still get a hatch out of it. I've had hatches where when you turn the egg sideways, the air cell was horizontal; it wasn't at the fat end, and I still got I still was able to get the egg to hatch. So that is one of the other reasons why you want to give your eggs a resting period. And also during the resting period, now is a good time to make sure that your incubator is fired up. You brought it up to temperature. You know that it's going to, hold the temperature. You want to get the temperature stabilized. It's a good time to test your turners, get them plugged in, and make sure that your egg turners are functioning properly. And also, for those of you who do what's known as a wet hatch, make sure that you can bring your humidity levels up to the level that you want them at prior to setting your eggs. So for the first 12 to 24 hours, you've got some stuff you can do. You can let your eggs rest. You've got some stuff that you need to be working on with the incubator. And we're going to go more into the incubator here in a minute. Next thing, once your eggs have rested, say, we'll say 24 hours, the eggs are placed into an egg turner pointy end down. And there goes my dog. I know some people will say, well, I've read online that you don't actually need an egg turner, and I've actually done a video where we tested one hatch without a turner and one hatch with a turner, and the results were pretty comparable. But I highly recommend using a turner. It's going to, subject that egg to more natural conditions, like where a hen would normally be turning them. So I would recommend using an egg turner. Like you can see this one, there are different styles of egg turners. This one was sized for like the little giant style incubators, the square styrofoam incubators. The next one here, this is an egg turner inside a Brooder unit. They've got kind of a unique design on their egg turners to where each compartment can hold up to 4 eggs. And also the egg turner can incubate, or can hold, not incubate, but hold different size eggs. You could put, goose eggs, duck eggs, chicken eggs, whatever, but also quail eggs. And you can go up to, like you can see right behind me, in one of those cells, there's 4 eggs. So depending on the size of the quail eggs that you're setting, Tiffany's talking about my dog barking. That's funny. So depending on the size of the eggs that you're setting, quail eggs, a lot of times that will determine how many that you can get in the turner itself. Again, the eggs need to be placed in the egg turners, pointy end down, just like when you had them during the resting period. And that is also going to help that any loose air cells, rise up again. But you want to incubate the eggs with the pointy end down. Okay, so we've got the eggs have rested up. We've got them placed in the turners. Now we can go ahead and put them into our incubators. Couple things with the incubator that you want to check, and this can actually be done when you're prepping your incubator. One is the location of the incubator. You want to make sure the incubator is not like too close to a window or something where the sun shining through the window can cause the housing of the incubator to heat up and affect your temperatures inside the incubator. Also, you might want it in a room that is either climate controlled or maybe doesn't have an air conditioner, because air conditioner can dry out the humidity. So you really want to watch what the humidity levels are in the room where your incubator is, because that can affect the humidity inside the incubator itself. And we're going to talk a little bit more about humidity here in a minute. You want to also make sure that you plug in your turners. I can't tell you how many times, guys, that I have set a batch of eggs and come back in 2 or 3 days and check on them, only to notice that I forgot to plug the turner in. And a couple days without the turner, no, it's not going to hurt anything. To be honest with you, I've actually gone a full 14-day incubation period. And when I was going to put the eggs into lockdown, I realized that I forgot to plug in the turner, and I still got a decent hatch rate. So, but make sure that your turner's plugged in. Make sure that your incubator is in a location that's not going to cause it to overheat, or close to an air conditioner where it may be cooled down too much, and in a room that is going to allow your humidity inside the incubator to remain stable. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about incubation temperatures. For the most part, if you have a forced air incubator, you want to set your incubation temperature to 99.5 degrees. Now, I know some guys may have like the DIY incubator, which is what this Inkbird is used on. You have to set the temperature either at 99 or at 100 degrees, and just because it will fluctuate a little bit. You set it at 99, once the heating elements go off, it will climb up a little bit. But for the most part, on your incubator, you want to make sure that forced air is set at 99.5 if that's possible. But if you have an incubator that does not have a fan in it, that's called a still air incubator. I think for the most part, the heating elements are mounted at the top. It would be kind of stupid to mount one at the bottom. But how they work is the element gets hot and it causes a gradient. So you may be up here by the heating element and have 102 degrees. Halfway between the element and your eggs, you may have just say 101, but then where the eggs are at, they're in that sweet spot, which would be about 99.5 up to 100 degrees. And that's how those work. Sometimes you got to tweak them a little bit. You've got to, raise your eggs up or lower them down a little bit to get them into that sweet spot. But that's basically how a still air incubator works. Okay, next we're going to talk about a little bit about incubation humidity. Now, this is for people who do what's known as a wet hatch. You have wet hatches and you have dry hatches. In the location that I am, I'm in South Florida. Our relative humidity outside is always at or around 50%, with exception of rainy season, where it can be up to 80, 90, even 100%. So I, for the most part, do what's known as a dry hatch, meaning I don't add any water to the incubator during the first 14 days of incubation. If you want to do a wet hatch, and by doing the dry hatch, my humidity levels always average anywhere between 30 and 40%, and that's just due to the outside humidity. If you're doing a wet hatch, you can either manually add water to the incubator, or some incubators have humidity pumps that you can buy for them, which will add water to it. This humidity pump is put out by Brooder. It's got a hydrometer built into it, and it pumps water into the incubator as needed to raise the humidity up to the level that you would want it at during the incubation time. I would recommend, if you're going to do a wet hatch during the first 14 days or the incubation period, I would try to keep your humidity levels between 35 and 45%. I know a lot of people say that they incubate at 50% and they get great hatches. Yeah, I don't doubt that they do, but what works the best for me is I actually keep it a little bit on the lower end of that, but I try to always keep it below 45%. Humidity can also be adjusted using your vents on your incubator. If you notice that the humidity is climbing too high, maybe open up some of the vents. Um, if it's too low, you might want to close off some of the vents, but you do want to make sure that at least one vent is open because you do need fresh air drawn into that incubator. Uh, excuse me. Um, so that's it basically on humidity. Like I said, you can either add water to the incubator manually, filling up one or two of the cells or however many of the wells below the eggs that need to be filled to raise the humidity into the zone you want it, or use a humidity pump. Okay, so for incubation period, the incubation is anywhere between 14 and 15 days, depending on how you count day one. Um, a lot of people I won't say a lot of people, many people start off counting the first day as day one. Some people wait until the second day, so day one is already completed, and then they count it as day one. So if you're going to count day one as the first day of incubation, then you need to go to day 15 before you put your eggs into lockdown. If you wait till day two, or after 24 hours, uh, to count it as day one, then you can go into lockdown on day 14. I pretty much always lock down on day 14, regardless of my count. Um, Basically, what I do is I look at the date on the calendar that I set the eggs, and I jump ahead 2 weeks and I mark that down as my lockdown date. Uh, Also, you notice on this incubator in the upper left hand corner, that piece of tape that's on the incubator, that is my lockdown day. I always put that on my incubators, just so as I walk by, to glance at the incubator, I always know what day they need to go into lockdown. I've had it before when I still keep it on a computer, but occasionally, time gets away from me and I don't, access the computer, every single day. And I've had it before where I come home, checked on the incubator, and there were chicks hatching with the hatching inside the egg turners. So, best thing to do is when you go into lockdown, make sure you know what day it is. Put something on your incubator. That way, you're not going to mess it up. Okay, so we've got to well, we're going to talk a little bit about fertility and candling. Uh, some people will check their eggs after 4 to 7 days, and they will candle them to see if there's any development and pull out the eggs that aren't developing. What I normally do is I wait till I go into lockdown. I don't disturb the eggs for the first 14 days. I usually wait till I go into lockdown and I'll candle at that time. And if the eggs are showing development, then they will go into lockdown. Um, Jana will get to the humidity after 14 days just in a second. But in this picture here, you can see an egg that has a illuminated air cell, but the rest of the egg is dark, and it's got a pretty sharp defining line there. In this egg here, up at the top, the entire egg is illuminated, and it's telling me that there was either it's an infertile egg or there was little to no development. It may have started developing and then quit on day 2, 3, or 4, whatever. But all those eggs that candle bright like this one, they are removed and not allowed to be placed into lockdown. You may find the occasion where if you don't candle until you go into lockdown, that when you open your incubator, you may smell, like a dead smell. I've had that happen, a few times, especially if you set an egg that you did not notice had a hairline crack in it. That would be one benefit of candling early, at 7, or again, at 7 days and then again on 14 days, to be able to catch those eggs that are cracked, so you're not, you don't have bacteria buildup, which an egg can potentially explode inside there, and get the rest of the eggs all nasty. So that's one thing of wanting to candle multiple times during your incubation. Okay, so we've gone day 14 or day 15, and we've candled our eggs, and we are going to place all our viable eggs into lockdown. Lockdown is a point where you take the eggs out of the turners and lay them on their side, either in an incubator like this one. Susan Fullerton just gave us a super chat of $10. Thank you, Susan. It is much appreciated. It's not necessarily, but we definitely do appreciate it, and we will, put that right back into the channel for the series here. But anyhow, the eggs are placed on their side and laid either on a hatching tray, like you see here, because the sides of this incubator are high enough, you don't need a hatching box. But what I like to do is I like to lay the eggs on top of a drawer liner material. And what that does is it just kind of protects the eggs a little bit. If you accidentally bump the incubator, there's not going to be so much shock transmitted from the incubator to the egg. It's also going to give your chicks better footing when they hatch out. They're going to be able to get some traction, and it's going to help a lot with chicks, or helps a lot with eliminating splay leg, and that can happen on slippery plastic surfaces. So that's the main reason I do that. Okay, now we are going to talk a little bit about humidity levels during lockdown. Okay, first thing I want to do is talk about what lockdown is. Lockdown is basically pulling the eggs out of the turners, placing them on their sides in your hatching boxes, and bumping your humidity up where it needs to be, and then they are locked down. You don't get to touch the eggs after that, or you don't get to touch the incubator after that, unless it's absolutely necessary. As far as humidity levels during lockdown, I normally because again, I'm doing the dry hatch, I normally bump my humidity up to about 50 to maybe 60% during the lockdown period. But I think you're going to find most people agree that between 60 and 70% is more of the norm. And it's absolutely fine. But what you want to do is you want to add water to the wells in the incubator, as not as much water, but you need to fill as many of those wells to give you a surface area large enough to bring the humidity up to where you want it. Now on my DIY incubators, which is what's pictured here, we've got this larger pan. I think that's a 10 by 12. It's got a larger surface area, and I usually fill one of those up with about between 16 and 32 ounces of water. And by having that larger surface area, it allows the incubator to climb up to the 50 to 60% humidity level where I want it. So just remember, it's not the amount of water that you add to the incubator, it is the surface area of water. You can add a gallon of water, but if your surface area is only 4 inches, it's not going to raise your humidity any higher. So you want a wider pan or a larger pan. If in some cases, even using a larger surface area like this, you can't get the humidity levels up where you want them, you can actually add sponges into the water, stand a sponge up, and what that does, that sponge will absorb the water. It will leach up into the sponge, giving you more surface area because you've got the sponge down. So that is what you want on that. Okay. A lot of people are really concerned with humidity levels, and it's fine, to be concerned. But I found in several years of hatching out eggs, incubating and hatching eggs, that add water to it, set it and forget it. Basically, I don't get anal about humidity levels. Temperatures now I like to watch, but humidity levels, I add the water, and it's normally enough to get you through the hatching process when you're in lockdown. Another thing you want to make sure that you do is Remember earlier I said you can adjust your vents to either raise humidity or to lower it by opening or closing vents. You want to make sure that you leave one vent open all the time. You've got to have fresh air coming into the incubator because you will carbon dioxide will build up in the incubator if you don't. So make sure you've always got at least one vent open on the incubator. Okay, we are now went through lockdown. The quail eggs will normally hatch on day 17 is an average 17, 18, but may go as long as day 20, um, depending on your temperatures. If your temperatures, were really stable throughout, or if you have warm or cold spots in your incubator. Um, but on day 17, you may notice that some of the eggs have a little pip hole in the egg, and you might even see a little beak sticking out of that. That's known as pipping. And what a chick does is the first thing they do when they pip, they do an internal pip, meaning they break the membrane into the air cell. And at that time is when your chick breathes oxygen for the first time. It's through that air cell. Um, Once they start breathing, then they will actually pip. It's an external pip, which is where they make a hole in the egg, and now they can get fresh air from outside the egg drawn into the egg, and they can breathe. And a lot of times when they get to that point, when they just do the external pip, the chicks will rest for up to 24 hours. I mean, they're tired. They've gone through a lot of work pipping internally and then breaking the shell. So a lot of times you'll see them with just their beak sticking out, and you won't see any more movement or action. For 12 to 24 hour period. So don't worry about that. The next step after they've pipped is they do what's known as unzipping. And if you look at that egg, I point the wrong way and you can't see my hand. The third one over from me, that egg that is looks like it's cracked all the way around. I think that egg was actually hatched out, but that's what they do when they unzip the egg. Basically, the chick, his head is positioned underneath his left arm or left wing, and he is pecking, and they go all the way around that egg and peck, basically chipping away at the egg until they make a complete circle around that egg, and then they'll just kind of pop out of it like popcorn once they get to that point. If you notice that you have an egg that has pipped and is unzipping, say they unzipped halfway around the egg, and then you don't see any more movement, don't worry about it. Let the egg sit and rest. The chick, they have to jackhammer out of that egg, and then they've got to take a break and rest up a little bit before they can continue on. I don't recommend helping a chick out of an egg. I know some people will do it. They'll get all their other chicks hatch out, and then they'll have one or two eggs where they've unzipped, but the chick hasn't made it out. And then people will help them out. I don't do that. If the chick's not strong enough to hatch on its own, I normally won't help them. But one of the biggest things that you want to watch, and this is why they call it lockdown, is once your chicks start pipping and unzipping the eggs, do not open the incubator. You want to make sure that the incubator is closed up and the humidity levels stay the same, because once a chick pips and then starts unzipping the egg, they're still inside that membrane inside the egg, and if you open up the incubator, the humidity levels can drop, causing that membrane to basically shrink wrap around the chick, and once it does that, they're not strong enough to hatch out of the egg. So you don't want to do that. For the most part, I wait 12 to 24 hours before taking my chicks out of the incubator and placing them into a brooder. But the thing you want to make sure is that the chicks are fully dry. The chicks can survive inside the incubator for 36, even 48 hours without food or water. They're going to be just fine. They're absorbing that yolk sac. They've got plenty of nourishment from that. They're not going to go hungry or anything. So you can leave them in the incubator. I wait till the bulk of them are dry, which is usually on day 17 or at the end of day 17, and then I'll open it up once and pull them out. I try to do it quick too, because like I say, if you still got eggs that haven't hatched out, you want to do it fast to make sure that you won't have issues with other chicks getting shrink wrapped. But I'll take the bulk of the dry chicks out, and then I'll leave the rest of the chicks that, like if you notice the chick directly above my head, almost to the very edge of the incubator there, it still looks a little bit wet. That chick would stay in the incubator until he fully dries out. I don't pull them out of the incubator until they're fully dry. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the brooders. Now, I'm not going to go into brooders too much in this video because we're actually going to do a whole talk on brooders here, probably in the next segment that we do. But basically, you want to have a brooder setup that's ready to receive your chicks. What I use are the plastic Sterilite tubs. I use those for like the first 2 days or 3 days sometimes. And I'll line it with pine shavings. They've got a coarse and a fine pine shavings available at Tractor Supply. I always buy the fine. It's the same stuff that I put underneath the cages in my manure trays. And I'll put that in there, and I'll put all the chicks in there. And depending on what heat source I'm using, it'll either be a heat lamp or it will be, I just started using the heating plates, and I'm really starting to like those. But what I do is I'll set up their feed and water. And as far as water goes, you want to make sure that the water is warm when you first introduce chicks to water for the first time. You don't want to get ice cold water out of your tap. Just make sure that it's like lukewarm. I actually put I won't say it's hot, but it's warm enough to almost wash dishes in, I guess you'd say. And what I do is I use a quart waterer with the small basin, and that small basin keeps the chicks from jumping into it and getting wet. You don't want them to get wet because if they get wet, they can actually die, from getting wet. But I use the small basin, and I also place the waterer on a 6-inch by 6-inch textured ceramic tile, and that just keeps them from kicking any of the pine shavings up into the water, and also just gives them something to stand on that's a little more stable while they are getting a drink. Now I don't know if I put I did put one there at the feed. As far as feed goes, I use a 30% game bird starter, and I will grind it up for the first 2 or 3 days, sometimes up to a week. I'll grind it, and then for the first 2 days, I pour it on a paper towel, and the chicks, they find it, and they know how to start eating. You don't have to, like you do with chickens, you don't have to show them where the feed is and whatnot. And same with the water. You don't have to dip their beaks. They'll figure it out. But what I'll do is I'll place it on a paper towel inside the incubator. I like to keep the water source and the feed source close to the heating element, or close enough to the heat source that the chicks aren't leaving. They don't have to leave the feed source to get to a cooler area in order to eat. Or did I say that right? They don't have to leave the heating source to go to a cooler area of the incubator or the brooder, for water or feed. So another thing you want to make sure about your brooder is that there are no drafts in the room where the brooder is. You basically, want to keep the temperatures in the brooder or underneath the heat lamp right around 100 degrees to start off with. Maybe you can drop it down a little bit to 99. It's not going to hurt anything. A lot of people they'll lower the temperature by number of days or how old the chick is, and we're going to go into more into that on the next video. But I really don't do a whole lot of that. The next one I just want to show you real quick. As the chicks grow, I will convert them over to one of these red chick feeders, It just and actually I do that right around 1 week of age, up to the time they are placed in a grow up pen. This is actually one of my larger brooders that's got a wire floor. They'll usually come out of the plastic brooder and go into this brooder, usually around a week to 10 days old. When I start seeing pin feathers, then I'll pull them out of that and put them in this brooder. It still does have a heat source on it, but I use the same waters, just a different feeder, and they are on a wire floor, which allows that manure to drop down. So that is pretty much it, guys, for the breeding incubation process. Getting you, from receiving your eggs through setting your eggs, hatching the eggs, and getting them into a brooder.